Why do we encounter so many fools, not just as mildly annoying people, but as individuals who seem almost determined to sabotage their own lives? It's a deeper question than it first appears. Psychological research distinguishes between intellectual limitation, emotional foolishness, and persistent, characterological foolishness, the latter characterized by repeated poor judgment despite adequate intelligence. Consider the case of a talented engineer who, despite warnings and past failures, habitually launches doomed startups, jeopardizing financial stability and relationships. Friends shake their heads, yet the pattern continues. Some might say, he's just reckless, why doesn't he learn? But to stop at surface explanations misses the complex motivations and psychological protections these patterns can provide. If we begin to recognize the deeper workings behind repeated foolishness, we open pathways for more compassionate understanding and for strategies that address root causes, not just symptoms. Have you ever wondered why some mistakes are fleeting while others repeat themselves for years? The key lies in understanding the different types of foolishness we exhibit. Studies show that while emotion-driven lapses in judgment are nearly universal, characterological foolishness, persistent, self-defeating patterns affects a distinct subset of individuals. Take the example of a friend who, during moments of intense anger, says things he later regrets. Yet, unlike those who perpetually stumble into the same traps, he reflects and adapts over time. It's easy to conflate all mistakes as equal, but not all errors stem from ignorance or impulsivity. Some are deeply rooted, structured, and resistant to change, a crucial distinction to make. Identifying which kind of foolishness is at play allows us to tailor interventions, whether through emotional regulation strategies or deeper psychological inquiry into ingrained patterns. Could stubbornly foolish behavior actually serve a purpose? It's a question that turns our assumptions upside down. Psychodynamic research suggests that repeated poor decisions often fulfill unconscious needs, such as recreating familiar childhood dynamics or providing cover for deeper insecurities. For instance, someone who consistently enters unhealthy relationships, despite knowing the warning signs, may be unconsciously drawn to familiar chaos that echoes their upbringing. Now, many argue, isn't this just a lack of willpower? But that view overlooks how these patterns can be adaptive, offering psychological protection or reinforcing a coherent, if painful, self-narrative. By acknowledging the hidden functions behind apparent foolishness, we can craft more effective approaches supporting real change, rather than just urging people to try harder. How do we actually help someone whose foolishness seems embedded in their personality? The path from understanding to meaningful change is anything but straightforward. Clinical evidence shows that interventions focusing on unconscious motivations, such as psychodynamic therapy, make significant progress where advice and rational arguments often fail. Consider the businessman who repeatedly lost money in risky ventures, each time convinced this time is different. Therapy revealed his financial failures were reenacting conflicts with a critical father figure. Skeptics may insist, isn't he just irresponsible or addicted to risk? Yet, without addressing the emotional roots, surface-level solutions rarely last, and the old patterns quickly resurface. So, when we shift our focus beyond simple blame and towards understanding, we become better equipped not just to interpret foolishness, but to help others and ourselves break free from its grip.
Have you ever wondered why some people seem completely oblivious to painful truths staring them in the face? This isn't always stubbornness sometimes, it's a deep psychological defense. Studies show that willful ignorance isn't just about refusing facts, it's an unconscious mechanism. Selective attention and motivated forgetting shield individuals from realities they feel powerless to alter. Consider the woman who was shocked by her husband's infidelity, despite everyone else seeing it. Her entire sense of self was built around being a devoted wife. So recognizing the affair would have meant facing terrifying uncertainty and the possible collapse of her identity. Now, some might argue, isn't this just self-deception? Yet, it's not a conscious choice. Their psychological survival depends on not seeing what others see. Critics may call it denial, but the underlying mechanism is much more complex. So, what can we do? Recognizing these defenses in ourselves or others gives us the insight to approach with compassion, not judgment, Practical steps include gentle confrontation and support, not shaming or pressuring, since change only comes when safety allows reality to surface. Why do some people persist in their mistakes, convinced they're immune to failure? This often goes beyond confidence. It's a narcissistic disturbance rooted in the need to maintain a grandiose self-image. Research indicates that narcissistic individuals routinely overestimate their abilities and ignore negative feedback, leading to a pattern where their apparent success is fragile and prone to collapse. I recall a patient who bankrupted 3 businesses, each time dismissing expert advice and blaming external factors. His refusal to acknowledge limitations protected a deeply insecure ego, even as it led to repeated disaster. But isn't some self-confidence necessary for success? Absolutely, but the difference lies in reality. Testing narcissistic fools distort information to preserve their illusions, turning what could be productive risk-taking into destructive self-sabotage. If you encounter this pattern, the best approach isn't confrontation. It's setting clear limits and encouraging realistic assessment of abilities, offering feedback anchored in facts, not flattery or condemnation. Have you noticed people who always forget obligations or seem hopelessly confused about simple tasks? Sometimes, repeated mistakes are less about intelligence and more about hidden hostility. Studies in organizational psychology reveal that passive-aggressive behaviors, like chronic incompetence, often function as indirect expressions of anger and resistance, especially where direct confrontation carries risks. Take the case of a woman who continually forgot to pay bills or manage the household, leading her husband to take over. Unconsciously, her incompetence was a form of protest against traditional gender roles she deeply resented but felt unable to oppose openly. Skeptics may say, aren't these just accidents or lack of skill? But the persistent pattern often reveals deeper motives. Foolishness here becomes a weapon, not just a flaw. In practical terms, addressing passive aggression requires uncovering the hidden resentments and fostering open communication, rather than simply correcting mistakes or assuming incompetence. Why do some adults seem unable to make even basic decisions without reassurance? This often isn't laziness, it's learned helplessness, the result of years of being told they're incapable. Developmental research demonstrates that overprotected and criticized children tend to internalize messages of incompetence, manifesting as adult dependency and apparent foolishness. For example, I worked with a man in his 40s who couldn't make everyday choices without consulting his mother. His childhood was dominated by a parent who controlled every aspect of his life, leaving him genuinely anxious about facing the world on his own. Some might argue, aren't these adults just refusing to take responsibility? Yet these patterns are deeply rooted, often beyond conscious control, and arise from systematic undermining rather than willful avoidance. Helping such individuals means building real competence through supportive guidance, not ridicule or forced independence. Creating safe opportunities for autonomous decision-making is key to reversing learned incapacity. Do you know someone who insists that just believing hard enough will make things turn out fine, regardless of evidence? This is more than optimism. It's adult magical thinking, a developmental failure to accept reality's limits. Clinical studies find that persistent magical thinking believing wishes can shape outcomes often traces back to unpredictable caregivers in childhood, where fantasy became a way to manage uncertainty and anxiety. A striking example. A patient moved for a job that was never offered because she believed enthusiasm implied commitment. Her inability to distinguish between wishful thinking and genuine agreements caused major setbacks, all rooted in early relational unpredictability. A skeptic might ask, isn't hope itself a virtue? Healthy hope involves realistic planning, magical thinking. By contrast, mistakes desire for guarantee, leading to repeated disappointment and avoidable hardship. The way forward is cultivating reality testing skills practically. This means encouraging concrete verification of opportunities and gently challenging assumptions, so hope can be grounded, not delusional. How should we respond when fools' actions threaten to drag us into their chaos? Setting boundaries without abandoning compassion is one of the most difficult, yet crucial, challenges. Research in family systems shows that rescuing people from the consequences of their foolishness often enables patterns to persist, as the psychological functions driving these behaviors remain unaddressed. I recall a patient exhausted from bailing out his brother, who habitually made disastrous choices. Only when he stopped rescuing did the brother begin to confront his own reality sometimes. The kindest act is to let someone face the results of their actions. Isn't it cruel to stop helping? Some ask. But endless rescuing doesn't address the roots of foolishness. It only shields people from vital learning and self-responsibility. Practically, this means clear communication, setting limits, and suggesting professional help balancing empathy with firm boundaries so both parties can move toward healthier patterns. How can you tell if someone is truly foolish or simply pretending for personal gain? Recognizing the difference is vital for effective response and self-protection. Clinical observations reveal that manipulative pseudo-fools use apparent helplessness as a strategy to elicit care and avoid responsibility, while true fools exhibit limitations rooted in developmental or psychological damage. For instance, one patient exploited confusion to shift burdens onto others consciously, while another's incompetence stemmed from deeply internalized incapacity imposed by childhood experiences. Surface behavior was similar, but underlying motives were distinct. A critic might argue, isn't it safer just to assume manipulation? Yet blanket suspicion can harm those genuinely limited by past trauma. Thoughtful discernment is essential to avoid further injury. The practical takeaway: set clear boundaries for all, but tailor your approach, confront manipulation, yet support genuine incapacity with empathy and skill building. Is foolishness simply a lack of intelligence? Or can even the brightest people fall prey to self-defeating patterns? The answer is surprisingly complex and culturally contingent. Psychological studies confirm that high intelligence can actually enable more elaborate rationalizations for foolish behavior, allowing individuals to defend self-defeating patterns with impressive logic. One philosopher I worked with, brilliant in his field, justified ignoring his spouse's betrayals through sophisticated argumentation. His intellect became a tool for self-deception, not protection against folly. Detractors might say, aren't such behaviors just personal quirks or cultural norms? Indeed, some forms of foolishness are sanctioned or even encouraged by certain cultures or social contexts, blurring the distinction between pathology and conformity. Ultimately, the practical application is self-reflection. Recognize that intelligence and culture shape, but do not guarantee, wisdom. True growth begins with humility, acknowledging our own blind spots and moving from unconscious folly to conscious choice.